Hazel Levesque is a character from the Heroes of Olympus and Trials of Apollo, and in this video, I'll share and explain her life and the events of the Trials of Apollo. Before starting, there will be spoilers in this video, so there's your warning. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Before the Hidden Oracle, or the first book in the Trials of Apollo, we had to get a bit of info on what happened after the Blood of Olympus. After the Blood of Olympus, Hazel was made Centurion of the 5th cohort, and Frank was welcomed as Praetor in Camp Jupiter. A couple of days after the final battle against Gaia, Leo Valdez sent a holographic scroll that told everyone that he was alive. This reached both Camp Haplet and Camp Jupiter, and Hazel was relieved to find out that Leo was okay. That's all that happens, so now let's go to the Hidden Oracle. Hazel doesn't appear here, but she is mentioned by her half-brother Nico. Nico explains where the 7 were ever since the war against Gaia, and he says that Hazel was a Centurion with Frank in Camp Jupiter. Another thing we can get from this is that Hazel was pretty busy as a Centurion, because the Romans didn't communicate that much with the Greeks, but it could be because of the connection problem that was going on in this part of the timeline. Like the Hidden Oracle, Hazel doesn't appear in the Dark Prophecy, but we do get a mention of her. This mention came from Leo. Around this time, Leo had been traveling with Calypso for months on Festus, and he hasn't seen any of the 7. Because of this, he remembers Hazel, and he admits that he really misses her. And now, let's go to the Burning Maze, the 3rd book in the Trials of Apollo series. Here, Leo arrives at Camp Jupiter and warns the Romans about the upcoming attack the Triumvirate was planning to make. Not that much is known about the battle, as it was completely off-page, but it can be assumed that Hazel helped in the fight as a Centurion. From what you can see later on, the camp suffered many losses, and that probably caused some emotional pain for Hazel, as she saw her fellow campers die. One of the main appearances that Hazel makes in this series is in the next book, The Tyrant's Tomb. Hazel finally appears here when she meets up with Apollo and Meg. Apollo and Meg had Jason Grace's coffin, and Lavinia Asimov was there too. Lavinia had just defended Apollo and Meg against monsters called Eurynomos, and suddenly 2 more Eurynomos attacked. Hazel launched herself into the fight, and destroyed the monsters with her Spatha, and once the fight ends, she cries seeing Jason's dead body. As a daughter of the Underworld god, Hazel was able to sense Jason's soul go through the Underworld, and she felt devastated that her thoughts were right. She then brings the coffin to Camp Jupiter with Apollo and the rest, and a funeral was held for Jason. During the funeral, Lupa, the wolf goddess, enters the place, and she gives Apollo a quest to find Tarquin's tomb. Hazel volunteers for the quest with Apollo, Meg, and Lavinia, and they soon arrived at the tomb. There, they met Tarquin himself. Tarquin tells them that he'll attack the camp alongside the emperors, and a fight happens. Hazel fights off one of Tarquin's men, and she was able to hold her own against another pair of Eurynomos. Hazel then collapses a literal wall behind Tarquin before the group manages to escape. The following day, Hazel arrives in a pickup truck for Reyna, Apollo, and Meg to find Sutro Tower. Later that day, Hazel witnesses another battle in Camp Jupiter, and she helped in defending the camp. Apollo sees her riding on her horse Orion, slaying monster after monster with her sword. Midway into the battle, she brings Apollo and Meg to Temple Hill to perform a ritual to summon a god for help. Later on, she meets with them again, and Apollo tells her something about Frank. It turns out that Frank had sacrificed himself to kill Caligula by burning his firewood, which represented his lifeline. Hazel mourns Frank, but she tries to brush it off because Tarquin was still alive. Hazel sends Orion to find Frank's dead body, and she goes to a bookstore where Tarquin was. Once there, Tarquin demands where the prophetic sibilant books were, and Hazel attacks him. Hazel's strength as a demigod is shown here, as she managed to greatly wound Tarquin, stabbing him in the chest with her sword and pinning him down. Hazel could have killed him already, but she let Diana, or the Roman goddess of the hunt, take the killing blow instead through an arrow to Tarquin's forehead. The group goes out to check on camp, and Orion suddenly comes in with a very much alive Frank, though right after, Frank lost consciousness. Hazel and Apollo stayed with Frank through the night, and they talk about how Frank was able to survive. Just then, Frank woke up, and Hazel gets overjoyed to see him awake. A few days later, Reyna surprises everyone by stepping down as Praetor to join the Hunters of Artemis, and an election was held for the next female Praetor. Hazel ultimately wins the voting, and she started her reign as Praetor alongside Frank. And now, let's go to the Tower of Nero. Here, Apollo gains his godhood back, and he visits Camp Jupiter. From the battle in the previous book, Frank and Hazel have started rebuilding the camp, and they recruited more Roman demigods. Frank and Hazel gave Apollo a tour of the place, and they revealed that Hazel's curse was gone. They noticed it whenever Hazel summoned jewels, and how no curse came along with it. According to Pluto and the son of Neptune, Hazel's curse could be removed by a descendant of Neptune, and that might have been Frank, as Frank was a legacy of Neptune. Frank then points out his praetor robe and made it transform into a sweater. Hazel jokingly disapproves of it, and that's the last of Hazel we ever get in the Riordanverse. Hazel, in my opinion, is one of the sweetest and bravest characters in this series. She's strong, powerful, and selfless, and she's one of my most favorite characters because of it. So how about you? What's your opinion on Hazel's character? Let me know in the comments down below.